Okay, okay. So good
S-
afternoon, everyone. Dear Vikash sir and dear friends, we are meeting for the third session of the last day of the 5 days, kind of training program of secondary and senior secondary school teachers of Madhya Pradesh. Because sir, they are the teachers of Madhya Pradesh. We have taken them for 5 days training, and it's the last day. In fact, yours is the last session. After that, we have some discussion winding up. So, thank you very much for joining, and I introduce Dr. Vikash to the forum. Dr. Vikash is a professor at, yeah, he's assistant professor at, uh, sir, you joined a new institute. I just forgot to write the name. Yeah, Madanapalli, I
Mallareddy
think.
University,
Madanapalli
Hyderabad.
Institute of Technology.
No, no,
Okay,
no. That was previous one, sir. Now it is Mallareddy University, Hyderabad.
okay. Yes, yes. Madanapalli was the previous one. Malla Reddy University,
University,
Hyderabad.
yes.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yes.
so is an expert. Sir has done PhD in the similar area, assessment of English, and has done a lot of work into that. So I requested sir to take a session on this topic called assessment in English language, and sir agreed. He's also writing a module on the same topic for the course. So I request sir to continue with the session and discuss about assessment in English language. Over to you, Vikas sir.
Thank you, sir. Sir, how much time do I have, sir? Uh,
We will continue up to five. We can continue a stretch up to 5:25.
okay, okay.
5:15 is the normal wind up time. We can stretch up to 5:25 p.m. Yeah, we'll take
Five,
some
sir.
time for questions and also maybe an hour for presentation and then questions and all. Yeah. No, 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 no. So for you,
We have
it
one
should
more
be
session.
4 o'clock. 4 o'clock. We'll just wind up
Yeah.
the session by 5:25. So for you, it is 4 o'clock.
Okay, 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 sir.
So 1 hour 15 minutes.
1 hour 15. Thank you, sir.
Okay, okay.
Uh, Good afternoon, dear teachers. My name is Vikas, and thank you, Ganga sir, for that warm welcome and introduction. And as sir said, uh, I work as an assistant professor in the Mallareddy University in Hyderabad. I've recently joined this place. So let us get started. I welcome all the participants to this probably final session uh, on
You got no
language
mic over.
assessment. I request
Good
all
afternoon,
the
sir.
good afternoon. I request all the teachers to please be on mute. So in between, we will have some interaction. If I have some questions, I will ask you to respond. Until then, I request everyone to be on mute, just to smoothly. Okay. So I will share my screen first. Is my screen visible?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Not
No,
not
No,
visible,
sir.
sir.
no, sir.
Can somebody
Not visible.
just a minute? I will reshare it. There is some delay.
Now it's visible, sir.
Now it should be
Yeah,
visible.
it's visible. Now it's visible.
Okay. Thank you
Yeah,
for
yeah,
that
it's
feedback.
visible,
Okay,
visible,
let
sir.
us let us get started. So as uh, I am told that this is the last session, and so far you have had training in understanding skills and understand LSRW skills and understanding different techniques and uh, uh, some highly what do we say cognitively challenging skills like research writing also have been covered so far. So this is the uh, Ganga sir requested me to keep my session to be the last session because it is on assessment. So we come to the assessment when uh, all the other teaching part is over. So I am assuming that you have had little bit training in understanding what the process of teaching is and the process of designing material for the classroom purposes and process of designing tasks. Okay, so with that assumption, I am going on. So this is going to be an introductory session on the uh, assessment. So the title of the session itself is assessing learning in ESL classroom. So let us not uh, discuss too much in the air. Let us stick to our classroom, because I understand all of you are teachers of English. And so yeah, so assessment as we practice into classrooms, and assessment that we have to understand, we have to administer and use as part of the teaching, learning, and assessment procedure in your schools. Okay, so the presentation will have two parts. So somewhere I will like elaborate, I will give examples on the concepts, but it's a big presentation. I'll try to cover uh, many concepts related to language assessment in these two parts. So there is part one and there is part two. So in part one, I will focus more on the basic concept of assessment and introduction to assessment, where we will talk about meaning and process of assessment, types of language assessment, and there are certain forms, and what is the role of feedback in the process of assessment, and what are the alternative methods and alternative modes of assessment that we can use into our classrooms. Okay, so and part two will focus more on the technical parts of language assessment and language testing. So we will look at the principles of language assessment, and types of tests, and what are the different types of test items, and how we can uh, what is the importance of testing as such, apart from all kinds of other language assessment. What is the role and scope of testing in our society and in our education system? uh, that is that is the second part we will look at after we have understood the some basics concepts related to language assessment. Okay, let us get started. So I hope I am not too critical or too difficult in my presentation. Can somebody give me feedback? Is this okay? Can I go on like with this speed? Are you able to
Okay,
understand me?
sir.
Sir,
Yes, sir,
okay.
Yeah,
it's fine.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. So if you focus carefully, if you pay careful attention, you will understand the process of assessment into this 1 hour. So this is for English teachers in any teacher training course, whether it is B.Ed.
सर आवाज नहीं आ रही सर आपकी
आवाज नहीं आ रही है? Just a minute. Huh?
आ रही है सर आवाज?
Sir, yeah, it's clear. Please go
It's clear.
ahead.
Maybe there is some network issue from somebody, some participant side. Okay. Okay. So as I was saying, so yeah. So if you pay careful attention, so this is the difficult area for any teacher training course, be it is B.Ed or any PG diploma or any short-term in-service or pre-service training course. So language assessment or assessment part is always there in any teacher training program, irrespective of the subject. So even if it is any core subject, assessment is always there. Okay, so what is assessment? So we'll start with the basic question. We uh, hear in many training programs and in many or in journals also this concept of assessment. So we have some basic understanding. We have all of us as teachers, we do establish some understanding about this assessment, the process of assessment. Okay, now through this session, you if you already know, you will reinforce your understanding, and if you have any loopholes in your understanding, or your uh, misunderstanding this concept, you will clarify your doubts also. Okay, so basic question is, what is assessment? Okay, so it's simply a process of making an appraisal. What is appraisal? It's a judgment or estimation, okay, of someone's skills, abilities, or understanding. Okay, so you have your students. So I'll keep giving examples like this. So you have students, and suppose you call some students very good when he participates in some task, or he gives answer. Even if the answer is partially wrong, you say very good. Okay, so that means you have, as a teacher, you are already processing the response given by your student, and you are already putting that into some examination in your mind very quickly, involuntarily, and you are giving your judgment. Okay, so uh, you are doing little evaluation or valuation of that uh, students response against some criteria that you have in mind, what right and what wrong, or what appropriate, what appropriate is. Uh, uh, the answer the answer is, depending on that, you give your estimation. So that is the basic concept of assessment. So whatever uh, uh, we do in the classroom, every second, every minute in the classroom, whenever we have some interaction with the students, you are doing an assessment. Even without asking question also, you are doing assessment. So you, in face to face classes, you look at your students faces, and you realize that whatever I'm explaining, students are understanding with the smiling faces. So that is your evidence, and you realize that, okay, whatever I have taught, it is understood, I can go ahead. So you make some judgment, make some appraisal of somebody's understanding or knowledge, and you take some decisions. In classroom also you take decisions. So you look at your students happy faces, you understand that they have understood, and you decide to move on. That is a decision taken based on your assessment. So this is the basic concept of assessment. Observing or using some procedure, your observation or your analysis, and reaching some collecting some evidence related to somebody's understanding, and based on that evidence, you kind of take some decisions. So it is a process of gathering evidence of someone's skills, abilities, and knowledge. Okay, through various procedures. Sometimes you ask questions orally. You ask one student to stand up and you ask one question. Okay, so that is also one procedure. You, or sometimes you give a unit test to the students. Okay, surprise test to the students, or you give a midterm examination, assignment, whatever it may be. You have different procedures to be used, different options of language assessment, different procedures. But the goal is to collect information about what they have understood, or to collect information about what they know. Okay, that is the goal. So it is a process of making appraisal, and after making appraisal, it's a process of collecting evidence. Okay, so that evidence part is very important, because that forms the basis for any higher decisions taken based on your assessment later. Okay, you may pass somebody, you may fail somebody based on that evidence. Okay, so we will discuss all those processes in as the session proceeds. So this evidence, so how does the, or what are the ways in which we L2 teachers, we second language or English teachers gather this evidence? Yeah, what evidence about students understanding and students knowledge? How do we gather this evidence? Okay, so for that we have,
Sir,
as I rightly explained now. Yes.
sir, good evening. I have some query, please, if you give me some time.
Can we take the query towards the
Can we,
end?
there is, yeah, thank you, sir.
Actually, it is related to the definition that you just recently told.
uh,
Whatever,
okay,
sir,
okay.
we can have, you can write it and take it towards the end, sir. He'll revert back to those slides. So please continue.
Thank you, sir. Okay, please. Sorry, we are. Uh, it should happen on the workshop mode, but due to scarcity of time, uh, maybe your query is uh, query gets answered in the rest of the presentation. Okay, please hold on to your thoughts. Maybe make a note, as Gangas rightly said. Okay, so how, what the ways in which we gather this evidence in the classroom? These are, there are some classroom assessment procedures. So we have test, we have direct observation. We observe how student is performing, or how some student is talking to his friends in English, how accurately, how inaccurately is the person speaking. Okay, or Even if you meet your students on the ground, you are still making assessment, you are still observing them, you are still pointing out there are some problems, my students are weak in this particular aspects of language, and you may focus that aspect of language when you actually go into the classroom and teach. Okay, so as a teacher, your assessor is always alive. Okay, you're always, that assessment battery is always on, you're always observing your student. So assessment doesn't have to be very streamlined and very planned activity, and keep distance and don't talk, and you give pen and paper and ask them to write answers. That is not the only assessment that we do as teachers. We on and that is the concept of classroom assessment that as teachers we need to understand. Okay, so we can give them tests, we can continuously observe them, we can give them various assignments, creative assignments. Okay, we have our own tools to make our assignments and our questions interesting for the students, challenging for the students. We take into consideration multiple aspects. Will my students be able to do it? Is it difficult enough? Is it relevant enough? Is it too easy for my students? There are many things that we take into consideration, and we use different procedures for us, assessment procedures. But the goal is to gather the evidence. Okay, and sometimes the goal is, even if you don't uh, uh, let's say uh, you don't formally record the evidence, but still that evidence is stored in your mind, and you are going to take some decision on that. Okay, that assessment evidence, that assessment, that whether the understanding has reached or not, whether there is error or not, even if you don't record this in the form of some document or some record, that record is still safe in your mind. Okay, your teacher's mind is a storehouse of all data related to the students. What is the weakest area, what is the strongest area, who is the most enthusiastic student in the class, who is not. All that data is stored, although not in a very systematic manner, but that data is always there. That is that itself is your assessment evidence. Okay, so you might have interaction with the students, you might give them task activities, or we give them very focused exercises into focusing on different aspects of language skills and elements, or other pragmatic aspects of the language. Okay, as the syllabus demands or as the course objective demands. Okay, so this is the tools and procedures. Then using these tools and procedures, we kind of decide when. So when the teachers, the point of time when the teachers uh, give these assignments, sorry, give the administer this assessment or present these assessment tools and procedures to the students, is also crucial. If you are giving a test or interviewing students in the beginning of the course, and which is the procedure in many international schools also. Okay, or uh, in many schools, not just international, this is the standard procedure. The students and parents are interviewed in the beginning, so they are kind of doing a diagnosis of what is possible. If the students become part of my class, becomes part of my class, what is possible, and what are the problems do the students have, and will the students meet the demands of my teaching or the course that the student is going to join. So if it is given, if any form of assessment, irrespective of the procedure used, whether it is a completely planned test or it is simply informal interview, if it is used as an assessment procedure in the beginning of the course, that means it is used for a diagnostic purpose. Okay, that means you are trying to find out the problems what are there with the students. Okay, then second point of time is the time that we assess the, or we present these assessment, we administer assessment procedures to the students is during the course. Okay, you might give us you might assess after every class, or after each week, after each unit, or after half of the syllabus is over. So these are the during the course assessments. During assessments, they are formative in nature. And so what is formative and what is summative, we will discuss. But there are incidences where we give assessment during the course. Okay, and at the end of the course also we call them summative or achievement based. Okay, all these concepts slowly I'm introducing, and so I will try to clarify these concepts as and when we as we go ahead with the session. Okay, so in from this slide there are two keywords here, formative and summative. Please keep that in mind. Okay, now we have been this is not these are not new concepts. You are already trained teachers and you have been teaching language, teaching English to your students. Okay, you are experienced teachers, so formative and summative all of us know. But what makes something formative and what makes something summative, that we are going to discuss in detail. Please keep these two concepts in mind. Okay, so after we have let's say understanding the processes, how the assessment is what procedures, what tools are used, and when the assessment is given, and why is assessment given, what is the entire procedure. Okay, the basic introduction that I just did uh, to the entire process of assessment. So there are certain forms of assessment. Okay, so forms and types of assessment. So there are three key acronyms here. One is assessment of learning, AOL. Second is assessment for learning, AFL. Assessment as learning, AAL. Okay, so assessment of learning simply if we look at this particular diagram here, so assessment of learning, AOL, simply includes the assessment you this is the assessment where you are not focused on students learning experience. So this is the end of the course achievement test. So you have board exams, that is assessment of learning. Okay, so you have, let's say, you give them the writing task and you don't help them during writing process, and at the end you collect their written drafts and you give them score. Okay, so writing task is out of 10 you get 7 marks. There is no explanation given to the students, and those scores are submitted for final evaluation, and students finally gets, okay, 80% mark, 90% mark. So this is assessment of learning. Okay, when the learning is complete, how much learning is complete, we assess that and we generate evidence and we take decisions based on that. That is assessment of learning, and it can be used for formative and summative purposes. For example, unit test or any test for that matter, if you decide to let's say give students feedback and improve your teachings, so unit test can be used for formative purposes, also for summative purposes. Formative purpose means you can after unit test you can decide, you can give the student score and you just throw away those papers, or you may decide to take those papers as data, as evidence, and find out what the problems are and give students feedback on the weak areas and explain them where they went right and where they went wrong. And you also change your way of teaching when you continue teaching in that course. So this is a formative purpose. Summative purpose means you take the assessment, you give them marks, and you the end of the story. Okay, so all these achievement tests, unit test, product based writing task or board exams, they can be used for formative and summative purposes also, but usually they are used for summative purposes. We do not usually, suppose ninth standard final examination, we hardly go back to those papers and improve our teaching into 10th standard. Okay, so that is why they are called assessment of learning. So assessment which happens after the learning is over, and the evidence that we generate from the assessment is not used to improve further teaching. That is assessment of learning. Okay, now second form or second category is assessment for learning, AFL. This is purely formative. Why do I say that? Now here also we have unit test. So same unit test, if you are using to improve, you are using to diagnose the problem and remediate those problems in further course of instruction or further course of teaching, then that is a formative purpose. So we can give assignment and give them feedback. Project work, we can give project works, we can help the students to plan the project, to collect data or to collect information and write. And we take the students from different stages, we give them actual experience of doing the project, and in that process you are also assessing them how seriously they are involved into the project, and how what do we say, how genuinely, or how genuinely they have collected the data, and how genuinely have they analyzed, are they copying from somewhere. So you observe them, but you are giving your learners a learning experience in the process of assessment itself. That is why we call it assessment for learning. So the main goal here is to, I am assessing, I am gathering evidence as a teacher, but my students are not simply sitting in the exam and answering 3 hours question paper exam. They are involved in actual task. They are getting experience of learning while the assessment is going on. Okay, so that is assessment for learning, and it is purely formative, okay, in nature. So any you observe your learners are involved into uh, learning process. Okay, you give task, activity, exercises, classroom tasks, classroom activities, classroom exercises. So these are given to the students, even they are given as assessment tasks, they still give learners learning experience. Students still learn something. uh, if students is facing difficulty in solving some exercise, you don't say that, okay, I'm not supposed to help you, this is exam. You do you go and help the students, because the students understanding and solving understanding doubts and learning is more important than your assessment. Okay, that is the beauty of assessment for learning. Okay, in assessment of learning, in the when the board exam is going on, you don't go ahead and you help the students, because you cannot say that, okay, he doesn't know that, maybe in the exam if I explain he will know. That logic doesn't apply for assessment of learning, but it does apply for assessment for learning, because the focus is on the learning part of the assessment. During the assessment itself, they are learning. Third one, which is even more student friendly and more learning friendly and more pedagogic in nature, which is assessment as learning. Okay, so here you may not be collecting evidence. Okay, this assessment, so you have peer assessment, self assessment. So you explain the criteria of peer assessment, explain the criteria of self assessment to the students, and they are involved into the process of assessment. You are, this is experiential learning. So they are uh, assessment itself is a learning task. So peer assessment is itself is a learning task. Portfolio and journals, when they are involved into creating portfolios of their writing, or their writing journals every week, every day, so they are involved into the procedure, and the assessment procedure itself is a learning experience. Okay, so this is assessment as learning itself. So there is new concept that is emerging in the field of assessment, dynamic assessment. Okay, so it's dynamic assessment simply means you are uh, helping your students on the assessment task whenever they require, and in this process you are making assessment also depending on how well they respond to your feedback, on to your help. Okay, for example, I have two students in the class, and I give them one question, and both of them fail to let's say uh, answer that question. Okay, so let's say the question is convert, like our grammar question. Let's take a discrete point question: convert one sentence act from active voice to passive voice. And two students are there and they fail to answer that question. Okay, so what do? I don't tag them that, okay, they are, both of them are incompetent and they don't know about how to convert. They don't have any knowledge about active and passive voice. That is how we usually do. We give them active, convert active into passive. They can't do it, they get 0 marks. But in assessment as learning, in dynamic assessment, it doesn't happen that way. When they are unable to do it, so we start to help them. So we say, when they produce incorrect response, we simply say, okay, your sentence is incorrect, Can you try once again? There is some grammatical problem there. Okay, they are not unable to, still unable to get. Third, we increase the level of our help. Okay, and then we say, okay, maybe you need to look at your helping verb, the tense of your helping verb. Okay, maybe one of the two students will crack the code and will answer. Okay, he will realize, okay, I used wrong helping verb there. Okay, like that. So how we get the response from the students and how much feedback, what is the detailing of the feedback required to get the right response, is the concept of dynamic assessment. So the response and the quality of your help that is given is taken into consideration for assessment. But in this entire process, the goal is to help the student, not to assess. That's why it is assessment as learning. Okay, same with any collaborative task you do with your students. So we, in writing a task, we sometimes we sit with the students and we do writing conferences and we write together. Okay, joint writing, collaborative writing. So those kinds of tasks, uh, although teacher may be assessing or may be giving them some task, but both of them are involved. Teacher is giving the answers, but the focus is the giving the student experience of assessment and giving the students experience of learning. Okay, so three concepts: assessment of, assessment for, assessment as learning. Okay, very crucial ones. Some of them are used for formative purpose, some of them are used for summative purposes. Okay, now in the process of assessment, when the assessment happens in the classroom context, one stage is very important where we give feedback. Okay, even after midterm exam also, or mid semester exam or term end exam, if there are 2 terms in a year, we usually show our papers, students their papers, and uh, they get to see what they have done. Sometimes we write comments in the paper. Okay, sometimes we explain what errors they have made. So this is nothing but feedback. Feedback is the process of, we communicate the assessment evidence that we have generated, we communicate that evidence to the students in a best possible way. Now how they understand that feedback and what is their response, that decides whether you need to teach those concepts again or they have understood. Okay, so we have a course objective, we have goals in the beginning, then we convert those goals into teaching, we teach them, we decide upon the methods of teaching and techniques of teaching, and then we give them some tasks for assessment, and using that assessment, we again communicate the results of that assessment to the students, which is called feedback, and again go back to planning. Okay, this is a cycle. So in this entire cycle, the role of feedback is very important. Okay, when you give feedback to the students on how well or how badly or how well they have performed, it helps the learners to improve further, and it also helps you to understand what is the actual level of the students depending on how they respond to your feedback. Okay, so there, the way they respond to your feedback itself is gives you a lot of information about their actual skills. Okay, so in technical terms it is called uptake. So students ability to understand teachers feedback after assessment. So depending on the quality of their uptake, you decide whether to teach, whether to go for remedial classes or not. Okay, so that is the role of feedback into process of assessment, and feedback should be the center of any classroom assessment. Any assessment that happens for learning, any assessment that happens for formative purposes, feedback should be the heart of that assessment procedure, because feedback, the process of feedback itself will decide whether you are doing assessment of learning or assessment for learning. Okay, if you are stopping at the assessment and you are giving them score and you are throwing away the papers, that means you are not, you're going to the feedback stage, you are not going to the assessment for learning stage, you are stopping at assessment as learning, and which is not good in the classroom context. Okay, so let me check the time. Okay, So then uh, in the same line, we have assessment for learning, assessment as learning, and assessment of learning, and we understood the role of feedback. Then uh, very important concept in the language assessment is alternatives. So traditionally we have certain uh, instruments or procedures, standard procedures to assess the students. We give them tasks, we give them test, we give them let's say assignment, we give them uh, all our standard procedures. We give them let's say something to do in the classroom, okay, unit test, term and test. Apart from that, there are certain alternative modes of assessment. Alternative means which are not usually used in which are not the standard procedures of assessment. Okay, so some of them are, we give them portfolio assessment. Portfolio means we simply uh, uh, throughout the course we ask them to maintain records of their learning. So suppose it is a writing course, so we ask them to uh, make a portfolio of all their drafts. First draft, then what corrections they made. Second draft, what comments they received from the teacher. Third draft, what revisions were made. Fourth draft, final draft, like that. First task, 4 drafts. Second task, 4 drafts. What improvement they have to show, the process of their improvement through that documentation. That is a portfolio. So teacher in the at some point will look at their portfolio and decide, okay, what is the rate of progress. Teacher will not go for assessing their writing skills. Teacher will assess that students potential to improve writing skills. Okay, so that is alternative. So there are many alternative modes of assessment. So we give take home exams instead of giving a timed exam and monitored and proctored exam, and they are right in front of you. They don't copy, they don't look at each other, and they don't what do we say, uh, waste time, and in timed manner they do. Instead of that, we give them a take home assignment. This is alternative. Now obviously for take home assignments you cannot give the same question as you give for the normal 3-hour exam. Okay, so we have peer assessment, we have self assessment, we have collaborative dynamic assessment, open book exams. So sometimes we allow the students to carry all the open books that are the course material, and we design the question in such a way that they will have a chance to go back to their books, but the questions will be the answers will be entirely application based. Okay, so that is example of alternative assessment. So we conduct interviews with the students. These are all alternative and unconventional processes of assessment, but they are very high on learning assessment for learning. They give very high what do we say, very uh, rich learning experience to the students. Okay, and while providing the rich learning experience, you can still use these as assessment procedures. We can still give them some scores based on portfolio, take home exam, peer assessment, self assessment. But for the students it is a fun game when they are doing peer assessment. Okay, it is not the boring pen and paper exam. They are taking the exam and they are learning also. That is the beauty of alternative uh, methods, modes of assessment. Okay, so all the alternative modes of assessment, they are learner or learning oriented. They are process based, not product based. Okay, the process of going through that assessment is more important than the final product. Okay, they are experiential. Students learn and improve through the experience. They are highly authentic. Okay, they are not stretched imagination, they are not discrete point, they are very authentic and very discourse oriented. Okay, innovative, these are innovative techniques. Okay, students have a lot of teachers have a lot of scope for innovation in alternative modes. So whatever I mentioned, these are not only modes of alternative assessment. Teacher can go creative, and teachers can create their own techniques of assessing students. Okay, That's why they are called alternative. So it does give a lot of scope for the teachers to kind of innovate in their own classroom. Okay, they are classroom based. They are very simple and straightforward. No complications, no complicated instructions, no rules, regulations. Okay, they are like normal classroom activity, and they are very. We will look at the principles of assessment. They are high on validity, authenticity, and washback, and they do uh, improve or channelize students' ability to think critically, think out of the box, and they also allow the students ample scope to show their creativity in their answers. Okay, same applies for the teacher also. Teachers will also have to think a lot when creating alternative assessment procedures. Okay, so that is I think the first part. Okay, I will take a sip of water if you allow me. Okay, so second part. Okay, and this is little technical, and don't get worried if you get confused in understanding what test types or what principles are there. If you understand the basic principles behind assessment and testing, you are good to go as a teacher. Okay, but still these are very important concepts as far as uh, your understanding of the entire process of language education is concerned, because assessment, whether it is test or giving scores or passing students, failing students, giving entrance to some course, or giving somebody tag as intermediate learner, uh, advanced learner, all these are part of the game. Okay, and as teachers of English we cannot separate ourselves from all these. Okay, exams are also part of the education process. Okay, and we have to deal with all those uh, as teachers. So a good idea to have little awareness of all these commercial and aspects of assessment. Okay, so let us get started. So the basic now at this point we need to understand the terminology now. Okay, now it has become little complex. Okay, so far we were discussing all ideal things. Now we are getting into practical things. Okay, I'm not saying that whatever we discussed earlier, all the things that we do in the classroom, they are not practical. They are very much practical, and we as teachers should make them actual and practical. But this is little systematic. The concepts that we're going to discuss, they are little streamlined and they are systematic. Okay, so first we need to understand the difference between these concepts: assessment, measurement, test, and evaluation. Now sometimes even experts in the area of assessment, good educationalists, they confuse between these terms. So they say, okay, how is assessment different from evaluation? Okay, I go for assessment, I go for evaluation. What is the difference? There is difference. Okay, so I will not read out this chart. This chart is from one book, actually, from Berry's book on assessment for learning. Okay, so to understand this concept in a better way, so assessment is, as we have discussed, it's a process of gathering information, okay, from multiple sources that we have seen. We no need to discuss. Then measurement is it's a process of measuring or quantifying, assigning numbers, quantifying whatever evidence that we have collected. So we have collected the written drafts. So converting those written essays of the students into some scores using some criteria, that is measurement. Okay. So two concepts over. Then third one is a test. Test is not assessment. Test is one of the tools, one of the instrument that is used widely for assessment. Okay. Now test, sometimes testing has replaced the assessment because of the wider use, because of the uh, mass use, excessive use of the test instrument, because it is convenient in many ways. Testing is convenient in many ways. That's why uh, everywhere, even inside the classroom also, we don't go for any task or any interview or on any presentation activity. We go for a test because it is easy to conduct, right? So test is just an instrument of assessment, one instrument. But since the importance of test is or effect, role of test is huge in our society. Okay. So people's lives are dependent on, so based on how you score on a particular test, you are either allowed entry into particular course or not, or based on how better you score on IELTS test or TOEFL test, you are allowed to go to other country or not. So very high stake, very uh, high stake decisions are made based on the test. That's why these tests, they have more importance than the basic assessment in the education context, because there is a lot of serious decision making that is done based on these tests. Okay, we have entrance test. So in the entrance test, if we pass the entrance test, if you score good, you get admission to particular course, or you don't get any recruitment test. Campus recruitment test is there, you pass the test, you get the job. You fail the test, you don't get the job. So test has it is a gatekeeper in technical terms. Okay. So it is a gatekeeper. That means you are in or out, you're pass or fail, you have a job or you don't have a job, because what happens in that test, what happens during that 3 hours or 1 hour test. Okay. So but test is not the assessment still. However important and however serious role does it play, it might play in our society and in our entire education system, but it is still not an assessment. It is still one tiny part of assessment, one tiny procedure, one of the procedures that can be used for assessment. Okay. So that is the difference between testing and assessment and measurement. Okay. Then evaluation is the entirely different process. Okay. Whether it is measurement where you get score, whether it is assessment, or whether you give test to your students, evaluation is the process of taking actual decision. Okay. So somebody gets 50 marks out of 100, that person is fail. Okay. Somebody gets 60 marks out of 100, that person passes. So the decision of fail or pass, somebody goes to the upper standard and somebody has to repeat the same class, this decision is evaluation. Okay. And this changes according to the criteria. So process of taking some very serious decision based on the entire assessment procedure, based on the measurement that is done, based on the scoring that is done, uh, based on the assessment, based on the evidence that is generated, is the process of evaluation. Okay. So let us understand this graphically. So we have the overall proficiency, language proficiency standards in our society. Okay. So language proficiency standards. So we might say proficiency standards are British standards, American standards, or standards like uh, uh, our standards are like how Shashi Tharoor speaks, uses language. That is the standard. It can be anything, but there are some standards of proficiency standards. That is the overall standard in the society. Now, from those standards, we select one tiny bit and we design one course, language course. Okay. That is the little smaller part. We cannot teach everything in English in one course. It's just not possible. From first standard to even graduation and post graduation till PhD, we cannot teach entire language. not possible. So we select a tiny bit, very focused course content syllabus, and we design course objectives. Out of those course objectives, okay, we evaluate some of them. We don't evaluate everything that is taught in the course. You understand? So there is, so evaluation is even smaller scope, has smaller scope than course objectives. And evaluation is independent of teaching, assessment, measurements, and test. So whatever you teach, you don't evaluate. Everything can be evaluated. Okay. But whatever you teach, only some of it is assessed. We don't assess everything. Whatever you assess, not everything is measured. You measured only some part. And whatever you measure, uh, not every, whatever measurement that you use, quantification, not all the measurement or not all the scores come from tests. Sometimes we have continuous comprehensive evaluation, CCE, right? And final test has some 60% value, and CCE has students attendance, their participation in the class, all that converted into some score, and 60% is from the final test. So measurement does not only happen for the test, it may happen for uh, other modes of, other procedures of assessment also. So these are the, this is the linkage between all these concepts. But, and this diagram is what adapted, it's a modified version from Brown and Avi Vikrama's book on language assessment and testing. Okay. So uh, don't get confused between these concepts. Okay. Now, as far as language testing is concerned, or language assessment is concerned, there are certain principles that we need to follow when we prepare language assessment, or when we administer something, when you prepare a unit test also, or when you prepare question paper for the board exam. Suppose there is board exam of English 10th class, and you are given a chance to design the question paper. You cannot have a speaking test there. You cannot say that, okay, board should arrange the speaking examiners for this board exam. There should be written test, there should be listening test, and there should be speaking test. It is impractical. You understand? So like that, there are some principles of language assessment, and which go up and down depending on the situation, depending on the resources, and depending on the purpose also. Okay. So 5 principles are there. One is practicality. So there should, the test should be practical enough for administration and for execution. It should have authentic, it should be have authentic use of language. It should be valid test. Okay. What is valid, we will look at the concept of validity in coming slides. And it should be reliable. And it should, reliable means whatever mm, score that is generated, it should be same, the procedure followed should be same across the participants. So you, it has to be fair for everyone. Okay. So for somebody the question paper is easy, for somebody the question paper is difficult. Somebody is writing the exam in a very noisy environment, and somebody is writing in a very peaceful environment. That is not fair. Okay. That means you are violating the reliability. That means the evidence generated through that assessment, we cannot rely on that evidence, because different procedures, one person has advantage of certain things and one has disadvantage. So that is not a reliable test. Okay. And washback. So washback simply means assessment as learning and assessment for learning. Any test situation should give some learning experience. Students should also learn while uh, doing that particular test or particular assessment. Okay. 5 principles. Let us, so all these infographics I have taken from a book. Okay. And they capture these concepts very well. So a valid test, uh, it should, just a minute, huh? Okay, a valid test should, it measures exactly what is supposed to measure. Suppose you are measuring, you are assessing speaking, and you are giving dialogue writing task. It's not a valid test. Okay, so it does not measure irrelevant or anything that is not related to the actual skill. Okay, so you are assessing, let's say, reading comprehension skills. You have reading comprehension passage, and students are giving answers, and you are cutting marks for their spelling mistakes. Not a good idea. Okay, it's not so you are focusing some on something that is not part of the focus. That is not the focus. You are testing their understanding comprehension abilities. So while they produce their comprehension evidence, if they make some spelling mistakes, you should not penalize them for that. Okay, because the focus is reading comprehension. If you are testing writing, so spelling is part of writing mechanics, you have all rights to cut marks for the spelling, but not for the reading test. Okay, so like that, it let's say relies on the uh, uh, as far as possible, it is very scientific, and it is very practical and empirical. It is based on empirical evidence, that is students performance. Okay, it doesn't have any biases from the assessor. Okay, then it involves uh, the performance that samples the objective. For example, you are let's say there is a test and which says that the particular person is an advanced learner, and when the person actually speaks, he's struggling to communicate. Okay, even basic communication, that means there is some problem with that particular test. The test which gives somebody advanced score and which does not match with the actual objective of the test, actual ability, then there is a mismatch and it's not a valid test. Okay, so it should be useful. Overall, it should look a test, valid test. That is the concept of validity. Okay, second is reliability. So these answers questions like that. Reliability, a reliable test has consistent conditions. So I explained reliability. It should, whoever how many, no matter how many students participate or how many candidates take the exam, the scoring criteria, the examination situation, the procedure of conducting exam, or scoring rubrics, everything has to be unbiased, unambiguous, and it has to be same across the students, and it has to be identical. Nobody gets an added advantage. Okay, so that is reliable. There is a reliability checklist. So does every student have a clearly photocopied test sheet? So everybody should have, nobody should have misprinted pages. Okay, then is sound amplification clear? So if it is a sound of test of listening, so in every testing situation for every students, the sound clarity should be same, or video clarity should be same. There should not be any technical problem. Okay, otherwise then the test is not a reliable test. If one student has a 1000K resolution and one student has 460 resolution of the video, then the one who gets 460 resolution of the video, which is part of the test, is at loss, and that test is not reliable because it is not giving the same treatment to various participants. Okay, so simply the weather conditions, the room temperature, all aspects go into the test reliability. Noise, suppose there is a board exam and in one city there is a lot of noise, and there is some marriage function going on near the board center, and other students are writing exam peacefully. So that is not and if we are scoring them on the same, what do we say, criteria, that's not a, so we are compromising reliability somewhere because the scores are not reliable, the final decision is not reliable. So we are violating the principle of reliability there. Okay, so that is Those are some of the points. Next one is practicality. So practicality means the test, a practical test stays within the budget. It should not require a lot of resources, impractical budget. Okay, so for 60 students, to assess 60 students uh, in a school test, we cannot have like 10,000 rupees budget, right? We cannot invite actually it is done in some of the schools, but it should be within budget. What is the budget allocated for the assessment? We should stay within the budget, because test administration procedure, if it is goes out of budget, that means it is impractical. Okay, that is the principle of practicality. So any constraints, test takers constraint, that needs to be taken into consideration. Okay, uh, clear direction in the test, so that there should be what do we say, the instructions given in the test should be clearly understood. So teacher cannot assume that whatever I have explained, or test designer cannot assume that whatever instruction I have given, they are very clear. They might be very clear to you because you are an advanced user of language. You are giving that to the fourth standard students, so you have to use the language which should be understood by the fourth standard students. Okay, so word limit, available resources, all that is part of the practical, or any practical issue for that matter. Okay, so same things, they are posed as questions. We will just we can skip this. Okay, then the principle of authenticity. An authentic test, it contains language that is actually used. So actual language, real life language that we use outside, same language should be used in the test as the input, or same language should be used. So authentic test. Okay, so same example, suppose uh, let's say there is a situation on the birthday party among the friends. So in the birthday party, we don't speak like that. Okay, I would like to draw everybody's attention to this cake cutting ceremony, or to this birthday party, and I cordially invite all my friends for my dear beloved friends birthday party. We don't use language like that, right? That is not an authentic language, because that is not the kind of language used in that particular situation. Okay, so that is the point. So the language has to be natural and possible. Okay, what is the language possible at the birthday party, if you are teaching that situation to the students, should be maintained. It's the principle of authenticity. Okay, so items that are items should be contextualized. So we do give decontextualized items. So we ask the student to uh, eh, as a if as a writing test, if we are asking them to correct the grammar errors only, that is not an authentic test, because it is not contextualized. As a writing test, we should ask them to write something. They should produce a discourse. Okay, so a writing test which happens at the discrete point level, it violates the principle of authenticity. It is not an authentic test of writing. Okay, so meaningful topics, relevant topics. Okay, so somebody who is let's say in fifth standard, and you are giving them let's say topics like terrorism threats to India and political system in India. Okay, or let's say theory of relativity and multiverse and all these topics, possibility of finding aliens, all this man's journey to the Mars. If you give all these topics to the fifth standard students, that means somewhere you are becoming unreasonable and irrelevant. Okay, so what interests you doesn't matter, what students might be interested in, or they might be able to handle. Okay, so my last birthday party, if like birthday party or raining or seasons, or food, right? Picnic. All these are the meaningful, interesting topics for the school's children. Okay, so it does provide some thematic organization. It guides the students. Okay, and it has it offers the task that can be replicable into the real life situations. Okay, that is the principle of authenticity. And the final, washback. Washback simply means uh, the the test that provides beneficial washback positively influences what and how teachers teach. Okay, positively influences what and how learners learn. So basically it gives a learning experience out of the test itself. So there should be some high or some learning benefit from the test itself to the students. Okay, so a test which is more formative in nature, there is a scope for feedback. Okay, so it enables the learners to give the best optimum performance during the test, during the assessment procedure. That is the washback effect. Washback means the test should have some positive effect on the student, on the learner. Okay, so some types of tests. Okay, so there are some types of tests, as you can see: diagnostics test, placement test, proficiency test, achievement test, aptitude test. So each test has a purpose, and there are some decisions taken based on that test. So a diagnostic test, as the name suggests, it is given in the beginning of the course, and the purpose is to find out the problems in the students, so that you can focus on those problems in the course. So diagnostics test, purpose is finding problems, and the decision taken is to frame the objectives. So how the students perform on the diagnostic test, and what are the common areas of difficulty, based on that the syllabuses or course objectives are decided. Okay, then placement. So you understanding the students potentials and students levels, the purpose, and the decision made is to place them in, to group them in as per their level. So basic groups, intermediate group, advanced group. Okay, like that. That is the purpose of placement test. Next one is proficiency test. You check their proficiency against some standards. Okay, there are some standards. You might be knowing the Cambridge standards, CAFR. Then we have like IELTS bands also. Uh, there are proficiency bands like basic, intermediate, advanced, or A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, and these are standards. So proficiency is the process. Proficiency test is the instrument to check the learner's proficiency against the standards. So the proficiency test at the advanced level is different from the proficiency test at the intermediate level. Those two are different tests. So proficiency test at the B2 level checks only the proficiency at the B2 level, and the decision made is we give them certification that this particular person has the proficiency of B2, or particular person has a proficiency of B1. Somebody is advanced learner, somebody is advanced user, somebody is the intermediate or basic user, elementary user. Okay, that is the proficiency test. There is something called achievement test to check the effect of instruction. Achievements means the meaning itself, the term, the word achievement itself tells us that what we have achieved through this particular instruction period. Or and decisions are, you might pass or fail that students, or based on the test you might change the instruction plan based on the achievement test. So if the achievement test happens in the middle of the course, you might change your instruction plan. Okay, if it happens at the end of the course, you might pass or fail the students. Okay, that is the achievement test. And the last one is the aptitude test. Aptitude test simply means to check somebody's readiness. So, and all entrance tests are aptitude tests. Okay, so we check language aptitude, we check scientific aptitude, let's say we check mathematical aptitude, to decide whether this particular candidate is eligible to join, or will that person be able to handle what is going to be taught on that particular course? So it check the readiness of the test takers to do something in the future. That is an aptitude test. Okay, so these are some of the tests and some test items. So I think most of you, all of you actually know all these items. You are teachers. We continuously guide students with all these. So, three types of test items can be there: limited response, fixed response, and free response. Under limited response, we can expect response in very phrase, or so we give them fill in the blanks and expect them to produce 2 to 3 words or one word. Supply type, again fill in the blanks. Okay, so we give them words and ask them to write the antonyms or synonyms or meronymy or homonymy, anything. Supply type, they have to supply the answer in the form of word. We have closed passages, so some words from the passage are deleted and students have to uh, fill in the blanks with appropriate words. This is limited response. So there can be variation in the response. Okay, still fixed response means there is only one fixed answer. Okay, error correction. So if we ask the students to spot the error in the sentence, and only one part of the sentence will have error and students will have to identify that, otherwise they fail the test. Multiple choice, one right answer, matching types, rating scale. So these are fixed response. There might be many additions into fixed response and into limited response also. And the third category is free response. So we give them writing task, we give them speaking task, essay writing task, paragraph writing task. All these are free response, and free response task will require some assessment scoring criteria to, what do we say, quantify them further. Okay, so finally, although I have spoken about it, standards in the assessment, standards are very very important. National standard, international standard, okay, British standard, American standard. Sometimes standards are limited to the course objective, standards of the particular course. Sometimes standards are related to particular field, English for academic purpose, or English for engineers, English for managers, English for doctors. Then the standards are specific to that particular field. Okay, so uh, finally, as teachers, whatever the test our students, because our students, they go through a lot of testing and assessment even outside your classroom. As teachers, we should guide them, those students, for some with some test taking strategies also. Like we have multiple choice test, we should teach them what is the test strategy of elimination. Yeah, so strategy of eliminating two wrong responses and then analyzing the test item. Okay, so test wiseness is also equally important to help your students to succeed in this competitive world. Okay, and some students, some trainers actually who train the students into taking tests, they are really proficient in training the students or raising their test wiseness. So raising students' test wiseness is also a responsibility of a teacher, giving them ample practice, helping them understand the question format and the way in which they should manage the time. Okay, how do they manage their uh, psychological condition, their affective factors during the test taking. Okay, all these are test wiseness strategies or test taking strategies, and we should train the students, because uh, not in your class but outside your class they are going to face these kind of tests. Okay, so I think that is it from my side. So I open the session for the questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. We are there to take some questions and all. If you have certain questions, queries, feel free to ask. Are there questions?
Yes, somebody was asking questions in between.
Have you got some questions?
Uh,
Uh, Thank you, sir, Dr. Kadam. It was a very nice presentation, and you have supplied more than sufficient material. So I don't think I have a question. Thank you very much.
thank you, sir.
Right. Vijay Tiwari, sir.
Sir, I have a very important question.
Please
Yes,
ask.
The
please.
question is important because we have KVs, we have formal system of education,
Mm-hmm.
uh, state government schools, but there is a parallel uh, system of education
Mm-hmm.
as
Yes,
a
sir.
coaching. They don't know all these things that we discuss here. They have not gone through pedagogies. They have not gone through various theories of psychology and see the quota education industry. What, how it has uh, not only challenged, it has defeated the formal system of education set out by British. How because this is my personal experience. I went to a coaching uh, and my son was there, admitted there, and the professor asked me that you have B.Ed, M.Ed, PhD. Still, why do you want your son to study here? Similarly, there are coachings that are working in the field of English also. How is it that this formal
Yes.
system of education has been not only challenged but defeated by those people who don't know all these theories, sir? Please, I want your answer.
Yes. Actually, very interesting. Sir, please, one of anybody whose mic is on.
So let's start because it's already 22 minutes late. So, welcome, good
There are
afternoon, everyone. I think we start.
one thing I want to add. This is not only related to technical subjects. There are bank coachings, and
Yes,
those who
yes.
coach, they have not
Yes.
done any formal education. Still,
So,
Yes.
their
Now,
students are quite successful.
earlier. Good afternoon, everyone.
now,
We have
uh,
the
Vikash, I
second
think
session of the last day or fifth day
mute
of.
everyone. Ah, very interesting question, sir. Now, the one word struck to my mind that defeated. I won't think that all these coaching centers and commercial institutions they have defeated education system because our role is even more important because we have to keep the education alive because the purpose for which we teach for overall development. Okay, so we don't teach the students in the school to like qualify some exam. School is the second society, so we focus on the overall development of the student. Now that commercial aspect we cannot avoid because there will be exams and there will be people who will give specialized training in taking that course. Let us not confuse ourselves as teachers. We are there uh, to ensure the overall development that students have some moral values, so students have some language skills or etiquettes that they need to learn. We take care of all those things. These things will not be taught in the coaching centers. They will be focused on okay, what will come in the exam and how to score better. There is no morality involved there. So we have the bigger role here, sir. That is my opinion. Sorry, I'm answering your question with my opinion.
Okay, my question was, sir, how those people who have not read all these intricacies, all these theories,
Sir,
psychology, and so on and so
there
forth,
actually
how they are outperforming a trained teacher, a professor?
no outperforming is a very what do we say relative term, sir. Outperforming, they are helping the students to score better. So scoring,
Being offline, otherwise तारा
that we
this
need
is
to
my
question.
term, this is my mister. You know कि क्या mistake मैंने तो नंबर
Correct, sir.
ढाई
So
sorry
they might
और
be helping the students to score
we
better, but the
yeah
education is improving. They're not outperforming. Maybe for instrumental aspects they are outperforming, but for
what
education
about our
aspects they
movement
are not outperforming.
popular also
Teachers are required and teachers will be there. Formal education has to be there. Without formal education, we cannot simply have this
I learned it
outperformance.
so we should
Voice
Why
is not coming
commercial?
clearly, sir.
gradually first talking of stress have to
His mic is on screen.
Yes, sir, there is
Your voice
problem
is
in the
not coming
voice.
clearly.
Hello, sir. Did I answer the question?
Sir, I am not satisfied, sir.
You're not
Very,
Matlab, to be
sir,
honest, to be honest.
this,
sir,
sir. Outperforming is
what
a
will
very
satisfy you sir
positive
what will
word.
satisfy you
sir,
So
Sir,
there is
because
one point.
I think
I
that does not
want
agree.
some kind of research to be done on this aspect.
Okay, because the basic premise, sir, when we say outperforming, in what aspects are they outperforming? That is the this is just commercial aspect, sir. If we leave the commercial aspect aside and focus only on the actual education part, actual learning that is happening, instead of scores, getting scores and getting big numbers, then I think we will get the real answer, sir.
Sir,
But
uh,
yes, I second on that that there should be some research done on that. How without having this training, how they are
Yeah,
outperforming.
sir,
they
there is
have no
one thing.
training on psychology, theories of education, evaluation, nothing. They are just practicing the question papers. They have mastered the art of solving, and a lot of their students are getting selected, and they are earning. Uh, in quota, a professor earns salary in crores.
True, sir. We can't we can't beat them because not every time the
So,
focus of the teacher is to earn money.
so
That's
that's
not
what I want to say, sir. Research is
actually, sir.
needed.
If we call somebody who earns crores as a very good teacher than somebody who earns very less, then we are moving somewhere else.
Professors of
Definition of
English
the success we need to change, sir.
are
Probably in
professors
our
of
mind.
English
Yeah.
and physics. They send their students to these coaching, their sons and daughters to these coaching institutes.
True, true. Because there are some instrumental gains behind it. Because of the
Yes, sir.
competition, there are many aspects. That's why I said, nah, tests they have surpassed the entire logic of education and assessment because they
Yeah,
have uh, completely taken over the education system itself. They are gatekeepers, tests, and
yeah,
they have become the education. So
yeah,
we get education to qualify for some tests, not to get educated.
yeah. Now, sir, I want to bring to your notice.
Hmm.
Uh, Students are getting admission in dummy schools where they don't need to go to school, and they regularly join some coaching classes and they crack the examination in a
True.
better way. This is happening in all the cities.
Does
In
happen.
your cities also, you might have
Uh,
witnessed this phenomena.
I think that is the reason we have this training program to improve the quality.
Okay, okay, sir. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes. Anybody else? But very good question, sir. I loved talking to you. You have a very analytical mind and critical mind.
Yeah, the question is in my mind for many years, and I have not got the answers.
The answer is a little tricky, sir. All of us are
Okay,
looking for
sir.
the answer.
Okay, okay, sir.
Thank you, sir.
any other question in the in the middle of that the talk there was a question he wanted
Yeah,
yeah
somebody.
if you can unmute and ask question now there was a sir who had some question he wanted to have some problem with the definition or some question related to definition have you got any query now if you're there you can ask it now See, we have certain certain discipline in the online. If you start arguments and discussion, it will keep on. I remember one day I was discussing. I was to talk about like something related to teaching of poetry, and then there came some discussion, and I completely moved from poetry to some other platform. So discussion has no end. That's why we keep slots for discussion. Now towards the end, we open it. You can ask questions. Yes, yes. There was someone who was asking the question. Who was
Somebody has raised hand, sir.
yes? Someone has raised the hand. So yeah, Rajput sir. Rajput sir, have you got any
Sir,
question?
yeah, sir, I want to answer Mr. Vijay Tiwari.
Yes, please, please, sir.
Sir, he said they are more successful. There was a poet, Kaka Hatrathi. He said, one who wants to sell his torch, he has to show the fear of the darkness. So the coaching centers are able to make fear, so they are successful. While in government schools, teacher, they do not make fear. They are only for working for just for their livelihood simply, but their purpose is to make money and to sell their item. So they are doing that. That is my point. If you want to sell your torch, you have to show the fear of the darkness. That is the main point to me.
Puskar Singh wants to add something. Puskar Singh. Puskar ji, please add.
Good evening, sir. I have a question, sir.
Please, please.
Sir, is there any specific difference between exam and test?
Exam, yes, there is difference. Exam can involve other procedures other than the test itself. Okay, so uh, suppose I had a English lab exam. I teach in a technical institute. So lab exam, it had group discussion. So it's
Okay,
not
sir. Okay.
specifically a test. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right. Any other? Any other? All right. So if there are no questions, we'd like to thank Dr. Vikas for taking the session on assessment in English language classroom, and discuss various aspects of what are tests, what are examinations, how tests are to be conducted, different types of tests, learning assessment for learning, assessment as learning, assessment of learning, all these things, and uh, satisfying the learner's query as well, the teacher's query as well as to how to take or have assessment in the classroom. So I think this session must be very useful, and being the last session, it was really something that will motivate them to have more of learning and not for promoting like exams and scoring and grading, which is something that does not promote much of learning, the system that we have now. So I hope this must have opened new horizons, and you'll do uh, uh, good assessment in the classroom, that whatever classroom you'll be going to. So thank you very much, Dr. Vikas, for sparing your time and discussing the topic with the teachers. I think we would like to, on behalf of all the participants in NCRT, like to say that it was really wonderful session. Thank you very much, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you for giving this opportunity, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you,
you. Would
everyone,
like
for
to stop.
active participation.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you,
Yes.
thank you all. Would like to stop here, and we'll meet after at 4:30. 4:30 sharp we'll meet. Though we're getting late, but 4:30 we'll meet for final, taking some words from you as to how did you feel, what changes you wish in the training program, what are your suggestions. We have been talking and talking. I want to listen to you in the last session. So I request you all to join on time and present your point of view, some of your opinions, some of your input, some of your feedback, some of your suggestions to improve the program, and also know your needs further, whatever things you need further. Thank you very much. We'll join sharp at 4:30 for validity session. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye, sir.
Thank you, sir.